The TrekWorks YouTube channel is sponsored by HDA ModelWorks, suppliers of scale lighting products, detail accessory parts, and complete model kits. Visit HDAModelWorks.com today.
Hello and welcome back everybody, Boyd here with you. This is part 4 of our 1/350 scale Polar Lights Classic Enterprise build-up. I hope you guys all had a happy Christmas and a happy New Year. We're back at it here in the shop. We took a couple days off and enjoyed it with the family, put out a couple retro videos. Looks like you guys enjoyed those. We'll be putting a few of those out here and there along the way. Going to be putting out some more on the Star Trek collection and a couple of the old builds that I did a while back. So that's been a lot of fun. But back to business here on the Polar Lights Enterprise. We left off in the last video, part 3, where we had the saucer all ready to go. We finished up doing all the work on it and had it all sealed. We did our masking, and so it was time to move to the next step of getting it painted. So I've been working on it a little here, a little bit. So I'm going to share with you guys what we're going to be doing next here. You can see I've got the bottom of the saucer painted already. We're going to be turning it over here in just a second and finishing off on the top. And then we'll come back and do a little bit of detail painting on these concentric rings. I've got a neat little trick to show you how to do that. And we're going to finish everything up by putting our decals on and sealing it up. And this saucer will be completed. And in the next video, part 5, we'll move on to the secondary hull. So let me explain where I'm at so far. I've got everything, we primed everything. I sanded this all down with 600 grit sandpaper to make sure it was nice and smooth. I wiped off all the dust and the, make sure there was no debris on it. I use a little item here I'll share with you guys. I've showed this before, but this is called a tack rag. It's basically a rag that has a little bit of wax impregnated into it, and it helps lift off the, the dust and the, little particles that might contaminate your paint. And once that is done, I'll come back with my compressed air, and I'll just lightly blow off a little bit. That'll make sure nothing's settled back down on there, and then I'll have at it with my paint. So we did all that, and then we sprayed it all down with our color. Now, the color that I'm using for this, I've been talking about this for a while. I've done a lot of research to figure out what color to paint the ship. And, now we have all that information that came out there from the recent Smithsonian Institution a couple years ago when they restored the big 11-footer. And Gary Kerr, who's been a long-time Classic Enterprise researcher, has kind of nailed down the colors, and they put out some information. And the base color that I have here, one of these is from Anita's, and the other one's from Folk Art. The Anita's brand here is called Heather Gray, and this one from Folk Art's called Jade Green, which you can see it's kind of a mint green. So I basically mix these two colors together. Primarily, it's mostly the Heather Gray here, and it's probably about a, probably about a 60-40 mix, 60% this and 40% the Jade Green to come up with my base color. Now you're going to have to kind of mix this according to your own individual eye if you want to try this. What this mix gives me, it's kind of approximate to the color of the plastic of the model kit, which is sort of that greenish, color. Now, adding in the Heather Gray gives it just a little bit more of a grayish green tint, and not so much a mint green looking that you'll see that the plastic's molded out of. I just didn't think that looked right comparing it to pictures I have of the restored 11-foot model. This looks really, pretty much to me, looks just about spot on. And so you kind of have to settle on that with your own eye if you're building this for yourself. But I've settled down on this color, and probably the last 10 of them I've painted this color, and everyone that who I've built this for and sent it to is really, really happy with the color, and so I've pretty much settled on it. So once we get that formula mixed up, we basically put it in a, I make a fairly good amount of it. I make about, I would say, probably about a pint, and that will paint, an entire 350 scale Enterprise with a little bit left over. You always want to have a little bit, if you're mixing a custom color, you always want to have a little bit more. So if you have to do any rework or anything or respray anything, you're not going to run out of paint and then try to come back and match it. If you're only using 2 colors, it's not too hard to match a color again, but if you're going to mix multiple colors together, you'll probably have a hard time getting an exact match again. So we get our color established, and then I'll basically mix that all up real good. Of course, I just mix it with plain old tap water. You can use Windex or some other things, but just plain old tap water works just fine. And I get my amount, about a pint, and I put it in a little container, and I just keep it there, and I pour out as much as I need when I spray each section into my spray gun, and we go from there. Now, one thing that you want to keep in mind, too, is that I've discovered with this paint is that when you spray it and it dries, it's going to be a certain shade, right? But when you go ahead and seal it, like I've done here with this Duplicolor matte clear coat, this means that it's not totally flat and not glossy. It's a nice neutral. It gives a really nice sheen on this, and you can see it looks really nice. And the decals lay down on it really nice too, and you don't get a lot of that silvering effect. When you go ahead and spray this down on there, it does darken it a little bit, just like almost any clear coat does. So you can look at it darkening about 1 or 2 shades, kind of somewhere in that neighborhood. Not radical, but noticeable. So in other words, if you had one area where you painted it and then you didn't, and you sealed it, in another area if you painted something and don't seal it, it's going to look different. The colors are going to look different. So keep that in mind. So when you're mixing your overall formula and you're deciding on the color, what you want to do as a test is after you've gone ahead and sprayed it down with your basic color, make sure you seal it too and let it dry, and take a look at how it looks when it's completely dry with the sealer on top to make sure it's still where you want it to be. Otherwise, you might want to lighten your base color back up again just a little bit more to make up the difference. So I just wanted to explain that real quick. It's not really a big deal, but just be aware of it. Now, so what I'm ready to do now, you can see I've got this all done. It's all been sealed. A really important thing you want to remember on this too is that using this water-based paint, you have to seal it with a clear coat before you put your decals on. If you're going to use water slide decals, water will definitely stain this paint if it's not sealed. So I put down really two good liberal coats of clear sealer on this before I come back and do my decal work. So this has been sealed with 2 coats of clear. I've let it dry, nice. It's been probably drying for 3 or 4 hours. And so it's pretty much ready to go. So the bottom side is all done here. So I'm ready to go. I've also got the edges all painted. So now I flip it over. You can see that this top side here has got my basic primer. It's all been scuffed down with 600, and it's ready to go. The paint's going to stick to it really nice. Now I take one of these tack rags like I talked about here a second ago, and I'll basically just wipe this whole thing down. You don't push on it super hard. You just kind of drag over it, and that'll lift off any debris or any dust or anything that's stuck on it, and get that out of the way. We'll make sure we get up all around this area here, and all of our masks in place, so we're all set. We can paint right over everything. But before I start spraying, I will take my compressed air here, and I'll just give it a light dust down. And what that will do is that will make sure that I don't have any anything left over. It's all going to be nice and clear and ready to go. And then just give it a good look over with your eye and make sure you don't have any pieces of hair or anything that's hard stuck in the primer or whatever that's doing what we did there, just didn't remove it. If you see any of that, you'll just have to sand it off to get rid of it. So we're ready to go now with our paint. I've got my paint in my cup here, and I'm using this little mini detail spray gun here. You can use a good airbrush if it puts out a good decent amount of volume, but you're going to work a little harder. You're going to have to do a little bit harder to do coverage. So I use this because it'll cover a lot more in one. I'll only have to make 2 or 3 passes on this, and we'll get a nice coat down on it. But now again, I mentioned that we're using a water-based paint here, and this is not a solvent-based paint, which will gas out and dry kind of on its own pretty fast. Where water-based paint, imagine how long water-based paint will take if you just poured some water on a table and waited for it to dry with the room air. So you can expect that long of a wait for your paint to dry. So I'm going to assist this a little bit with using my heat gun. I'm using a heat gun, but you guys can use like a hair dryer. In fact, when my heat gun finally dies out here, I'll probably replace it with a hair dryer. A hair dryer will actually work probably a little bit better because it moves a little bit more air and it doesn't quite get as hot. Now I'm used to using it, so I know how to keep it moving and keep my distance and everything. But if you're not used to it, you could wind up melting the plastic because they do, put out quite a bit of heat. But so I've got my I'll have my paint gun in one hand and my heat gun in the other, and I'm kind of working back and forth because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lay down a really fine mist coat. I'm not going to try to paint this and make it all look very perfect on the first layer of paint because we'll be piling it on too thick. We can get runs and things like that, and it can dry unevenly and all that kind of bad stuff, so we don't want that to happen. I'm going to be dusting down a really light mist coat. It won't look really pretty. As I dry it, you'll see that I keep piling it on, and it'll start looking better and better. So I'm just going to go ahead and start spraying it and not talking. And I've got my gun all adjusted, so here we go, everybody. All right. Just start off with a general fog down of the whole thing. And then we apply our heat. As you can see there, that's just a really fine mist coat is all it was. That way I can dry it a whole lot faster. And I'll probably be pausing the video in between here so you're not spending, 20 minutes watching paint dry, literally. So if that happens, just kind of expect that a little bit. This will take me probably a good 10 minutes of doing this to get this completely covered. Now, it won't look pretty at first. Like I said, you'll see little spots where it looks like there's smudges and things like that. It's not really there. It's just the way the paint is on the first time you lay it down. It just kind of, fights it a little bit. But it will smooth out, especially when you start putting layers on and it starts to dry. You can see I'm staying about 6 inches away, and I'm moving my gun constantly here, and I'm on low heat setting. Okay, you see these little imperfections here? They look like imperfections, like there's something on there, but there's nothing there. It's just the way the paint looks, so don't be scared by that. Okay, we're going to hit it again. Make sure I keep my volume turned up here. Now I've got it on this little turntable so I can spin it around. Get the front side of this BC deck. Alright, that's as far as I want to go. Dry it again. It's just kind of rinse and repeat, you guys, until you get a nice even coat and it looks nice and even with your eye. And you can see it darken up as it dries too. So whenever you're trying to mix a color with this craft acrylic paint, you want to look at it when it's dry to see how the final color is going to look. It's not going to look the same as it looks when you see it in your mixing cup or whatever. It's going to get a little bit darker. Little spot right there, but it's not really there. Like I said, it's just a little, just the way the paint dries. And one thing I really like about this craft paint, especially spraying it like I'm spraying it now, it dries really smooth, and so we don't even have to sand it. I'll be applying my clear sealer right over the top of this, but you'll see. Okay, we're ready to hit it again. You can see I'm just kind of sweeping over the whole thing. Coming right back in with my heat gun. Okay, so I've been making progress here. Just did a little time lapse real quick for you guys. You can see I've got, probably took about 3 or 4 coats here, and I'm just tidying it up right now, finishing off drying around the edges. I've got a few spots that are Just a little bit wet yet. And that'll do it, guys. That's how it came out. It'll be pretty much dry to the touch right now, but I really don't want to touch it. What we're going to do here is we're going to let it sit for about a good 15 or 20 minutes and let it cool down and everything, harden up really nice. Then we're going to come back with a detailer's towel, a brand new detailer's towel, which I'll show you what that is, and we're just going to lightly wipe that across the top here to get, if there's any little pieces of dust that did get in this, I'll be able to feel it. It'll feel rough, and it'll pull those right off of there and smooth all this right out. Then it'll be ready for our clear coat. So we'll come back and do that right after this. Be right back. Okay, everybody. Well, the top of the saucer's been drying for a good 10 or 15 minutes here. It's plenty dry. So I've got this detailer's towel, and I'm just going to wipe across it here, and you can feel a couple little. Usually, you'll feel a little bit of roughness there. And it'll just smooth right out as you go over it a few times. Just kind of go over the whole thing. I'm trying to make sure I don't snag any of my masks. And we'll just kind of do that real quick before we seal it up here with the clear coat. Get all the way out to the edges. Okay, and that should be good. I'm not going to have to use my tack rag. I'm just going to go ahead and hit it with my compressed air again. Okay, so it's pretty much ready for our clear. Again, we're using this Duplicolor matte finish. I'm just going to dust on a nice even coat. And you'll see, I don't know if in the light of the camera or not here you'll be able to see it, but it'll darken it up just a tiny little bit as we go across it. All right, so that's a kind of a nice even mist coat, and that'll probably take a good half hour to dry, and then I'll come back and we'll hit it with one more. And I probably won't show that on camera just to be wasting you guys' time, but we'll get that dry, and then we're going to be able to handle the sauce. We're going to take it over to the other bench. We'll turn it upside down. We're going to paint on those 3 concentric rings on the bottom with a neat little trick that I figured out how to do that. We'll show you that in just a second and be right back. Okay, well, we're moving right along here now. I've let this thing dry for a little bit, and I've got it over to the other bench now. And I'm ready to come back and add the detail of the paint on these concentric rings here. I want to talk to you guys about a really easy way I figured out how to do that. In the past, what I had been doing here is before I would even spray any of my base color, in other words, when I just had it in primer, I would take some of my color here, which is this Delta Ceram Coat Straw, which is a really close match to what I'm seeing on the photos of the big model. And I would just take my airbrush and I would just spray it on in general, covering these entire rings. Then I would mask these off using some really thin vinyl masking tape that fit exactly in these grooves here, and I would cover it up, then come back and spray my color, pull that at the end and have the rings. And it would always leave, really tiny little imperfections that I would have to come back and touch up or whatever. And it also used a lot of the tape, and I eventually wound up running out of it. And I kept thinking there's got to be an easier way to do this. And so what I finally came up with, you guys, was I came up with, I'm using this little plastic syringe here with this fine tip on it. And you can get these at any of your local drugstores. Like I have a CVS right up the street, and they sell them there. It's like a couple dollars. This is the same thing that I use at the end when I go in and fill in all the windows with my canopy glue. And so it's a kind of a multi-purpose tool. And this little tip will kind of fit right in this little groove here. And so what I'm doing is I'm just going around and squeezing a little bit of paint in and letting it flow in the grooves, because they're in there pretty deep, and you get sort of a capillary action where it'll just kind of flow and fill itself in there and wind up being just about perfect all by itself. You just have to be a little careful. Now, not to worry if we mess up a little bit and we get a little bit overflowing on the edge. We've sealed this entire thing, as I mentioned, with a couple of coats of clear. And water-based paint will not stain or attack, the existing paint. So if I get a little bit on there, I can just take a paper towel or whatever and wipe that off and start over again. And so we don't have to worry about, if it was solvent-based paint, you could have a problem. You'd have to probably come back and repaint, you know, because it's going to stain it a little bit beyond there permanently. So I'm going to start off here at the very center one, or the one at the very top, and I'm just going to start putting it in. Got a little drop trying to come out on me already. You just want to be really slow and really careful. I've got the paint mixed up fairly thin, and you can see as I just kind of dip it in there, I'm just going to gently apply a little pressure on the, you know, the applicator, you know, the plunger as I go around here. And I don't want to push, you know, a whole lot out all of a sudden. I'm just gently doing that. You might have to go back and do this once or twice, because it may dry a little unevenly, you know, where the paint got a little thicker in some spots than it did the others, but this works really good. I'm just going to keep going all the way around here. And it's laying down there really nice. Trying to stay in the groove. Get it back a little bit more towards me here. Again, I am barely putting any pressure on this plunger. I don't want to push, you know, all of a sudden and a big blob comes out where it overflows and messes me up. I'm just barely pushing on it. I don't even really want to talk too much while I'm doing it, you guys. I'm just trying to be really careful. Almost squeezed a little bit too much right there. But it leveled out and it flowed right in there like I wanted it to. Okay, so what you see there is that when that dries, that will look absolutely perfect. It's not, you know, it's not uneven at all. It looks really good, and it will dry a little darker. Right now, it looks a little bit yellow, and then don't forget once we put all of our decals on here, I'm going to seal this again one more time with clear coat, or maybe 2 times, depending on how many times it takes to get the edges of the decals go away a little bit. And that's going to darken that color down a little bit more. Like I mentioned, all these water-based paints, they all, you know, they all darken up a little bit when you apply a clear coat on them. So let me go ahead and do this second one, and then I'll go ahead and do the. Whoop! I went too far right there. Like I said, guys. But that's no problem. You can see that we can wipe that right off. Let me get a little bit of extra cleaner on here. Just use a little bit of Windex on a paper towel and we'll wipe that right off. That's not a problem. That's the good thing about water-based paints. Okay, so we'll start over here. I got to be a little bit more careful. Like I said, when you first start, that's when you gotta, when you first start doing it, that's when you got to be really careful, because that first squeeze is when it wants to come out of there. Go back this way. That works pretty good, turning it to the turning it clockwise. I'm still kind of getting the hang of this, but it's working better every time. And as I mentioned, you know, if it gets a little thin in one spot, just let it dry and then come back and hit it again, and it'll all even out really nice for you. Okay, so there you have it, guys. It looks a little weird, you know. You'll see. Let me just hit it with the with the heat gun really quick, and you'll see that it'll all even out. Right now it looks like it's a little like it didn't cover evenly or whatever, but that's because it's already starting to dry in some spots and it's darkening up. Once I dry this, you guys will see what I mean. I don't want you guys to think I did a sloppy job on it here. You can see it's getting darker. This color looks really, really close to what I'm seeing on the pictures. And again, it will darken up a little bit more once I hit it with the clear too. Okay, that ought to do it. Okay. You can see how nice that looked, guys. It's actually perfect. I mean, I'm not seeing a single spot where that spot's a little bit wet there still. But I'm not seeing a single spot where it got wider or thinner or anything. It's exactly the same all the way around. And that's a much cleaner look than I was getting even using the masking tape, you know. So that's saving me a whole bunch of money too. Masking tape's expensive. So when you got like a little reliefed area like that, you can use that capillary way to paint. You know, I'm gonna use that technique on some other stuff when I run into a spot like that. So I'll go ahead and finish the third one there off camera. And when we come back, guys, we're gonna start putting the decals on this and get all the markings in place and everything. And then our saucer will be done. Once we seal it all up, this will be able to be set off to the side, and we'll come back in our next video and start on the secondary hull. Once we get into the secondary hull, things are going to start moving along really fast. We get that part done, and that's really the main part of the model. A little bit of work to do on the engines and everything, but that's not too bad. We got some seams to fix on that. So let me go ahead and get this other one done. We'll come back and start putting down some markings, and it'll really start looking like the Enterprise. Be right back. Okay, well, it's time to put some decals down on the saucer now, and so I thought I'd share with you guys what I'm using. Now, over the years, as you guys know, I've worked with this kit for quite a long time, and I don't like to comment too much about, you know, quality model kits and all that, because, you know, I'm just happy to have the kits that are available. But I hate to say it, but the decal set that comes with this kit has gradually over time gotten worse. I think they're using different vendors and things like that. I've been having a lot of trouble with the decals on this. Issues where they crumble or they come apart. They're actually kind of thick, you know, so they stick above the surface really high. So like when you seal it all down, you can see the edges and stuff like that. And then the colors, I think, are a little bit wrong, especially on the reds here that we have for the pennants and things like that. They're more, you know, on the model kit decals, they're really a really bright red, and they really shouldn't be that bright. So what I'm using here is an aftermarket set of decals from HDA Model Works, and I've been working with Jerry on this. We've been kind of fine-tuning these, I should say, as we go along, and we've gotten it down now to where we're using this really thin decal film that Jerry's come up with, and I'm really happy with it. I've used it at the last probably 3 or 4 of these builds now, and they lay down on there really nice. They lay down flat. I'm not having any problem with silvering or anything like that, and the edges are just barely noticeable when you finish everything up. You know, you're always going to notice a little bit of an edge if you have a decal, but you want to try to get that down to where it's pretty minimum. So I'm going to be using these for you guys today. Now, the only difference really in applying these and working with them versus the kit supplied decals is that these are not die cut. So when you cut them out, you have to cut, you know, really carefully and really close to the edges. Just have to be a little bit careful doing that. But they work really, really nice. Otherwise, you just use regular water and everything, and they dry like the usual decals do. You don't need to put any kind of a sealer on these. That's already been done for you. So we're going to start off here on the bottom of the saucer, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put down the NCC 1701s that go next to the navigation lights here. Now I'm using the kit supplied paint guide. And no matter how many times I do this, I always refer to it because it's easy to make a mistake. You've got on the one side here where the NCC is flipped, and then on the other side it's flipped the other way. So you want to make sure that you put those on. So I basically line this up the way it looks in the picture. And so on this side, which will be the starboard side, if we were to flip this over, I know that my NCC 1701 is kind of right side up. On this side over here, it's going to be upside down. So why they did that on the big model, I have no idea, but that's the way it was done. So we're going to make sure we copy that. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got a good pair of sharp scissors here. I'm going to cut out these NCC 1701s right here first. I'm going to stay really nice and close to the edges. This takes a little bit more time than the die cut decals, but you know, it's really well worth it. They look great. I know originally a while back Round 2 had talked about using all cartograph decals for all their model kits, and that doesn't seem to have happened yet, but it could be because of supply issues or whatever. Again, I don't want to trash Round 2. I think they do a good job for the most part with all their stuff, and I'm just really happy with you know, having these kits available. Sometimes, you know, you just gotta add a little bit more, do a little bit extra. So we'll move these out of the way, make sure we don't get any water on those, and we're just going to do our normal thing here. We're going to lay them on our little towel here, and I don't actually dip my decals in water anymore. I just spritz them down with a little bit of my water here out of my pump spray bottle, get them good and soaked. And it'll take a couple of seconds here and they'll break free for us. I'll spritz a little bit of water on the spot where I'm going to put them on, and we'll give it just a second here to get released and ready to go. As I talked about, I've got this all sealed with 2 coats of clear, and that's really important. I can't emphasize that enough if you're working with this acrylic water-based paint. If you don't do that and you try to put any kind of decals on or anything, you're going to get stains in your paint. Most of the time when it dries, it'll go away, but I've seen a few times where when I first ran into that problem where it didn't go away and I had to go back and repaint it. So save yourself a little bit of trouble. And then you get a nice smooth surface too with the clear coat on there, and the decals will lay down there, and hopefully we won't have any silvering. But what we mean by silvering, for those of you who are new to modeling, what happens is when you put your decals down, you've got this transparent clear film that's on these, and tiny little air if you got a rough surface or something, tiny little air pockets will get underneath of that, and when it dries you'll see these kind of white, almost salty looking little specks that'll appear in the white film. And it, you know, it's not a super big deal, but if you get up really close and look at it, it can be kind of annoying, and you don't want it to look like that. You want it to look like it's almost invisible. So the smoother you get this surface, the more chance you have of that not happening. So just a little pointer on that one. And so we remember here we're doing the port side here first, and then we'll do the starboard side. So this one's got to go upside down. Now to line this up, I basically go with the navigation light here in this window group right here, and go make sure it's straight across, and then just a little bit of spacing. I try to make that equal on each side. You can pretty much see on the this is what I'm using right here. It's off camera, but it comes with the kit, and it gives you all your paint and your color call outs and all your decal placement. So I always keep that handy. As many of these as I've built, I always go back and reference that. And depending on the decal film, some of these are, you know, it takes longer than others where they'll start to move. This one's already broken free, so we're going to go ahead and put it down. Remember, this side we're going upside down. So we're just going to get that. Now the trick to getting these to lay down with decals, as I've always done, is I'll lay the film, the backing paper, down on there totally flat as possible, and then slide the decal off, so I'm not, in theory, I'm not trapping any air behind it, and I'm not giving it a chance to, you know, do something funny and get wrinkled or fold up on me or anything like that. So we've got our general placement there. Now we just take a basic paper towel and kind of tamp it down, get rid of the excess water. You want to make sure you press evenly. Don't, aggressively jab at it. Just gently just push it down like I'm doing here. And you want to make sure you go over the whole thing. Now I'll kind of like rock my finger back and forth. What I'm doing is I'm hopefully squeezing any of the air or any of the water bubbles that are trapped underneath of that, and squeezing them to where they come out the edges and are gone, so that in the end our decal will lay down on here nice and smooth. Sometimes you got to kind of do it like I'm doing now. I'm holding the edge of the decal and I'm just kind of squeegee action, pushing the water and the air bubbles out of it. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that one right off the bat. Sometimes they'll move around on you and stuff like that, and you gotta, fiddle around, but the alignment on that one is just right. So we'll go ahead and go to the other side now. Again, trying to keep my my paper nice and flat as it comes off of there. Okay. And you notice how I flip this one around? It's upside right. Now if the decal doesn't want to move when you put it down on there, just a little bit more water and that will break it free right away for you. Don't fight with it. If it's not wanting to move, don't try to keep nudging it or whatever. You could wind up tearing it or something. We're just going to make sure I'm just kind of eyeballing this straight across. Make sure we got our gaps the same. It's looking pretty close, so go ahead and do the same process again here. You see how gentle I'm being with this. Hopefully you guys can see this, and my hands not blocking the view for you here. Just take your time. Getting rid of the excess water around it. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to grip it up here on the top and I'm going to just pull across it real gentle. Don't go crazy, because you could tear it or these are laying down really nice for us here. I've always prided myself on my decal work. I've always managed to get them on pretty nice and not have a lot of problems with them. I've got like I said, I've got a system down that I use, and once I get something that works, I pretty much stick to it. Don't try anything weird or different when I'm in the middle of something important. The only reason I put a little bit more water is we had a little wrinkle right next to the C right there, and instead of fighting it, I wanted to loosen it up again and let it work itself out naturally. Like all of us that have built kits, especially on the vintage kits, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've pulled off a miracle where I had a decal completely break up on me or something like that, and I spent literally like an hour or two, putting together like a jigsaw puzzle and getting it all lined back up where you couldn't tell. But you try to avoid that, and if you're using newer stuff, you're not gonna have to worry about it. It's mainly the old vintage kits that you're trying to use 20-year-old decals or something like that. Okay, so that's down there pretty good, and as you can see, it's looking really nice. And you don't want to fiddle with these. Once you get them down on there, don't pick at them. Don't if you see a tiny little wrinkle, use a little bit of water and try to work it out first before you try any of the Solvaset or any of those things, because you can wind up making it worse with that. I don't use Solvaset or anything like that unless I've got a decal that just refuses to smooth out, or if it's going around a complex curve or something and it won't lay down on there flat. That's about the only time I use it. I use that stuff, most people put it, well, I should say most people, some people put it on automatically on every decal they do, and you really don't need to do that. You can wind up causing a problem when you never would have had one in the first place. That's kind of, to me, is like a last resort kind of thing. It's not automatic for me. So, but everybody has their own way of doing it. So we have those first two in place. Let's go ahead and take a look at some more here. I'm not going to bore you with doing the entire thing. It would take an hour here. Let's see. We've got these little landing gear covers. That's what these actually are. Everybody kind of wonders what these markings are on the Enterprise. These are supposed to be actually landing gear hatches that can open up because the saucer, in theory, could separate from the rest of the ship and land. We never got to see that, but that's what that detail is. So let's get these cut out. We'll put those on. Again, I'm going to just cut them out generally here, and then once I get the smaller piece in my hand, I'll trim them down a little bit more precise. Okay, and we want to cut as close to the actual decal as we can, because these, again, are not die cut like they are from the factory when you get a kit supplied decal. And we don't want to see any excess decal film if we don't have to. Okay, there's one. All right. Get the old stuff out of the way here. And we'll get these, a little water on those and get them ready here. A little water up here. Again, the reason I don't put these in a bowl anymore or anything like that with water is because I would find myself forgetting and then, you know, doing something else, getting distracted, coming back and finding out that they already fell off of the film, and sometimes they got all curled up and laying in there. So this way works just fine. They come free in just about the same amount of time, and I don't never have to worry about that happening. Okay, so we'll give this just a second again. It's like this is, you know, the high quality decal film. If they're new, especially like that, they'll release fairly fast. You won't be sitting here for an hour waiting for them to break loose. I've, again, worked with some of the vintage kits, and that glue on there got so old and hard that it took like 20 or 30 minutes before the decal would finally start coming free. One thing we'll do here too before we close this video up today, I'm going to put a couple of these decals on for you, and I'll get that all finished up, and then what we're going to do is we're going to show you how I do the doming effect here on these navigation lights with our solar res. Once I get all this done and clear coated, we'll come back and do that at the end, and then we're going to use our little injection tool there, our little syringe, and we're going to go ahead and put the canopy glue in the windows, so you guys will see how that works. Then once I finish all that, we'll seal it all up with clear, and this will be set off to the side, completed, and ready to drop down on the rest of the model once we finish the assembly on that. So we'll just give this a couple more seconds here. Let's test this one and see if we're ready to move yet. Yep, it's already broken free. So these come across real nice. Again, keep it flat. Kind of work it into place here. Fortunately, we've got these nice scribe lines on the kit where you can see exactly where these are supposed to go. Okay, that's looking good. Again, just real gentle. That way I don't move it or, you know, put any unneeded stress on it. I just kind of use the light here in my shining on it and just kind of shimmer it around a little bit, and that way I can see if there's any bubbles or any, you know, any imperfections there. You're always going to have when you first put them down, there's going to be some really tiny texture on there, but you're mainly looking for big chunks of, you know, sometimes a little piece of dust can get caught underneath of that, or a little bit of air. That went down on there really good. I don't see any problem at all. It lined up nice on our line, so we're going to let that one go. Move on to the next one. Okay, it looks lined up nice to me. I see a couple little air bubbles on this one, so I'm just gripping it and pushing them up to the top, and they'll come right out the sides and disappear. Alright, you guys, there's two of them. Okay, they look really good. A little water spot right there. And so I'll be just continuing the same process. I've got to put the little red ones on that go around here. Got a couple that go around the little window groups here that are simulating some hatch covers. Then on the top we got to put the big NCC 1701 and all that. And I'll go ahead and get that done here. I'll come back in just a second, show you how that turned out. And then we're going to go ahead and seal this whole thing with another coat of clear. Maybe 2 coats, depending on how many it takes to hide the edges of the decals. So it'll be a long kind of thing for me, because once I get all these decals down, I want to let this dry for a good couple hours. But for you, it'll just be a couple of seconds. That's the beauty of YouTube, guys. Be right back with that. After an hour or two for me and just a couple seconds for you, I'm back, everybody. Got all the decals and everything done. Everything's been sealed with the clear coat like we talked about. Came out really nice. Everything looks nice and clean. We did our nice little work here at the making these little windows right here match the rest of the B and C deck windows. You know, making those smaller with the solar res. That worked really nice. All the masks came off nice and clean. Came out really great. So I've had it drying for about an hour. I'm going to flip it over and show you that everything turned out really nice on the bottom too. And so I talked about what we're going to finish up with here. This video is starting to get a little bit long, so we want to wind it up for you guys. We're going to do the little domes right here on the marker lights, because now that I've got this all cleared and everything, I want those to be on there separate over the top of everything else. So we'll get our solar res out here and I'll show you how we do that. We'll just do this one side here, and then you'll know how to repeat it on the other side. Then we're going to do some of our window groups here with some of my canopy glue. I'm using this Formula 560, which I'm just about out of, it looks like. But I put a little bit of that up, you know, just stuck it in there and sucked it up into the syringe. And then we're going to stick it right in these little window groups here and just push a little bit of that in there, and then wait till it's flush and then move on to the next one. So we'll get to that in just a second, but let me get my solar res ready to go. It's pretty cool out in the shop here today, which is actually a good thing for what we want to do right now, because as I mentioned, this stuff, when it's cooler out, it gets thicker, and hotter it gets thinner. And they tell you in the some of the recommendations about using it, that if you want to get the, you know, more pronounced doming effect, if you want to make like a dome on top of something, to actually put it in your refrigerator for a little bit. But it's been cool enough out here where hopefully we'll have it that way already. And then there's, you know, it's a pretty simple trick. You just when you put it down on here, you're going to just make sure the tip is actually touching right in the center of what you want to touch, and just really gently squeeze a little bit out of that, and don't force it out, and let it just kind of work its way out of there, and then just barely lift up. And it's almost like making a creamy top ice cream cone with, you know, the old soft cream, where you wind up with a little bit of tip on the end of it and just let go, and it'll just slowly settle down, make a nice little dome. And then you want to hit it real quick with the with our UV light here. So we'll go ahead and give this a shot and see if it's... I'm going to get my little piece of cardboard out here so I can test this out first. See if it's down at the tip yet. Okay, we got it coming out. The whole trick to it is not get an air pocket in it, so you got to maintain that contact with it. So I'm going to do this real careful. Hopefully I don't mess it up. The good thing about this too is it's non-toxic or non-invasive, so if I goober up a little bit here, and before I hit it with the UV, I can take a paper towel and just wipe it all right off real quick, and it won't ruin my paint or anything I've done here. So that's the good thing about this stuff too. But hopefully I get it, I'll pull it off on the first shot here. Okay, I got the initial spot that I wanted, and I just pulled it off real careful like that and let it come right down and bead up on itself. I'm just letting it settle. I'm watching it from the side. It's settling down on there nice and perfect. I'm going to hit it real quick. We didn't get an air bubble or anything, and it looks exactly like the lens that should be in there, the little plastic lens that should be sticking up on a little dome, just a little bit like it is. So that works out really, really good. Okay, and then we'll come over here and do this one on this side. Perfect little dome. That works really, really nice. And we hit it right away with this light, and it'll lock it in that shape, and it'll stay that way. In fact, it looks nicer than the kit part because it's a lot more clear looking and nice. Okay, and that'll do that for that. I'll show this to you kind of a little closer if the camera doesn't blur out. It's a nice little dome on there. Won't go anywhere. It bonds really good. So we're all set with that. So let's wrap this up, you guys. We'll take, I've got a paper towel here. I'm going to put a little bit of my water on it just to have it ready in case I make a little run here. But we're going to put in some canopy glue. And let's see, we're all the way on this corner back here. We'll start off with these. So I'm just going to put the tip right in these little, push it in just a little bit. And then push the canopy glue up in there. I got a couple air pockets in my, a little bit too much there. That's not a problem. We're going to use our paper towel to clean this out. You want to get a good amount in there. Don't flood it in there, just, but you want to get a good amount. Make sure you inject a good amount inside it. So when you go to wipe it off here in a second, we'll give it just a second to kind of sort of grab a hold on the inside there. And then we're going to take this paper towel with some water on it, and we're just going to wipe straight down here. Make sure we get any of the excess residue off of there. All that we have left is what's inside the windows. Just like that. And you'll see that it'll dry nice and flush and just maybe slightly recessed, which is the way they should look anyway. And then it'll have a sort of an opaqueness that won't be, totally crystal clear where you can see through it and see all the wiring and all that. Like we diffused all this glass up in here. This is all the kit glass. If you remember, I dusted over the inside of that with some white so we don't have raw light coming out of there and twinkling effects and seeing wires, and if we look at it up close. So these will match what the rest of it looks like when we're done. Okay, So let's go ahead and do another group while we're at it here. Hopefully I control it a little bit better this time. It kind of got away from me there. Yep, you've got to put enough of this in there, guys, so that when you do your wipe down or whatever, just like I showed, you don't pull it back out, and you don't want it so thin where, you know, it's just barely in there either. You want it to be in there, you know, reasonably thick so it stays there. That one we did much better. We just got a little bit of over. Okay, this one here at the very top, I can see right away. You can tell because when you wipe over it like that, the glue will kind of retract in there too much, and you can tell you need a little bit more in there. When you stop, it should look nice and flush to begin with. Okay. Now, if you wind up with a little bit of around the edges, like if you don't wipe it off quite good enough, you'll see a little difference where the glue is on there versus the clear, and it's not a big glob. You can't leave big globs on there, but if it's just kind of like you see it's a little shiny or a little duller, just dust over that real light with your clear coat. Don't spray the whole thing, just dust over that with your clear, and that'll blend that all right back in, and it'll go away. So I'll go ahead and do that all the way around the rest of the windows the same way. All the other glass is already done. We used the kit glass on the BC deck, and I'll just flip this over real quick to show you one more quick talking point before we leave. If you're wondering an easy way to line up this, it's really important, of course, that you get this all on here straight. If you put that on there crooked or whatever, it's going to really show up on the model. This is really the whole focus point of the whole USS Enterprise anyway when most people look at it. It's this area right here, so you really have to do a nice job on all this kind of area right here to get it to, not show any, big flaws right off the bat. But to line up these markings here, it's really simple. You use the bow light right up here, and you use these two windows in the center to get your center. So the dash between the NCC 1701 lines up right on that center line right there. And then the slope of the number should be about 1/3 of the upper half of the number there should be, up on the part where it starts to slope up a little bit, and the rest of it where it's curving down. If you kind of follow what I'm saying there, you'll see what I mean. It's, when you look at the ship from the front, the upper part of the letter should be on the slope, and the rest of it, kind of on the flat part. So to line up the USS Enterprise, the T goes right dead center in between these two windows, and then you just want to make sure that so that's your measuring back and forth, and then you want to make sure it has the same gap between the U and the N and the E and the 1 over here, and you'll be good to go. That'll kind of help you line it up. It was easier to do on the other kit that had the grid lines because you could kind of match everything up. So when you're finished here, you should see it should be nice and straight like that, and your 1 should be just past this window right here, and the N should be just past this window right here. Just kind of an easy way to think about lining that up whenever you do one of these. It's kind of a daunting task when you first lay it, on this big open area here, but that's where I've learned to do it over doing several of these, and it's worked out pretty good. Okay, you guys, so sorry this video went kind of long, but we got a lot covered on this one. The saucer turned out really nice. We don't have any junk in it or anything like that. It looks really good. So we'll set this off to the side now. We got to do a couple little small things. We got to put the window glass in here, and it goes in from the top. We got to put the little spine piece on here. The bridge part's got to go down, and we'll come back and put our little dome lights here on the top that come with the kit. We'll just we have to paint those with some Tamiya. It'll be green on this side and red on this side, and that'll be one of the very last things we do when we start putting the fine little touches on the model after it's all put together. But for now, what we can do is we can put the saucer off to the side. It's pretty much all done. Again, it came out really nice. There's our rings that we showed you how to do again. All our little marking decals are down. I didn't use any solves set on any of this. It all laid down there really nice just on its own. So there you have it for the saucer, everybody. I hope these videos will give you guys confidence out there. It just takes a little bit of thinking ahead about what you want to do and just taking your time and being patient. And, once you get a little system down like this, kind of stick to it, and you can get really good results. So we'll see you for the next one. That'll be part 5, and we'll be on to working on the secondary hull. doing the same thing, basically putting some lighting in, light blocking, and building it up, and we'll build the neck and go on up to the saucer and put the two together pretty quickly. It's going to move along. I'll probably be putting out updates on this every couple days now. So we'll see you next time, everybody. Take care and happy modeling.